Pumpkin muffins are one of my favorite things to bake in the fall, and today we're making them sourdough style. Sourdough pumpkin cream cheese muffins are moist and tender with a creamy cheesecake filling and a buttery cinnamon crumb topping. And the best part is that you can make them two different ways, as a quick sourdough discard recipe or the long fermented version where all the flour is fermented overnight. So whether you want to use up some of your discard or you want a truer sourdough bake, this recipe has you covered. Okay, we're gonna start by making our cream cheese filling. Now, just a quick note, throughout this video, I'm gonna be calling out the ingredients by weight, but don't worry, if you still like using measuring cups and spoons, that's totally fine. I'll have the ingredients by weight and by volume down below. So go ahead and break out your measuring cups if that is how you like to do it. So there's 3 parts to this recipe. We need to make the muffin batter, the cream cheese filling, and the crumb topping. And we're gonna start with the cream cheese filling. And honestly, the sooner we get this done, the faster we can get these muffins in the oven, and then we can be eating them. So let's go. Now, if you have a stand mixer, now would be a great time, or even a hand mixer, to use that, especially for this cream cheese filling part. But I'm not gonna break out my mixer today. I'm gonna do this by hand just to show you that it can be done. So what I have here is 225 grams of cream cheese. It's softened, it's just been sitting out on my counter for a bit. And then to that, I'm gonna add 1 egg yolk, just the yolk. And then I'm gonna add 65 grams of sugar. And then I have a teaspoon of vanilla, which is 5 grams. And then we're just gonna get aggressive here and mix this up. Now, it's not gonna be easy because the cream cheese is, even though it's soft, it's not super easy to incorporate by hand, but you can do it, and I'm gonna show you how. And this is gonna be our cream cheese filling that goes in the center of these muffins, and it is gonna be so good when you bite into that sweet muffin with that brown sugar crumble on top, and then you get a bite of this yummy cream cheese filling. All right, so we're gonna mix this up pretty well. And as long as your cream cheese is soft, it's not gonna be too difficult. But again, if you have a mixer, this would be a great time to use it. You can use it to make the muffin batter too. All right, I'm pretty happy with that. It doesn't have to be perfect. And then we're gonna move on to our crumble topping. Okay, now we're gonna make the brown sugar crumb topping. This is gonna go on top of our muffins and make them extra delicious. So what I have here is some all-purpose flour. This is 84 grams of all-purpose flour. I've got 67 grams of brown sugar. I'm using dark brown sugar, but you can use light brown sugar if that's what you have. And then I've got 3 grams of cinnamon, which is just a teaspoon. And then I have some melted butter here. So I'm using 56 grams of melted butter. I'm using salted butter because that's what I have. If you're gonna use unsalted butter, I would go ahead and just put a pinch of salt in with this. I do think it needs a little bit of salt. And then we're just gonna mix this together. And it's gonna form what kind of looks like a little bit of a sandy mixture, and that's what we're going for. I mean, honestly, these are some of my favorite things. Brown sugar, melted butter, cinnamon, all good stuff. So you're gonna probably need to get in here with your fingers and just kind of squeeze this together until it resembles wet sand. So let me get in there. Get all that cinnamon. And this is gonna go right on the top of the muffins before we bake them. It's gonna give them this little bit of crunch when you bite into the muffin. It's really, really delicious. Definitely don't skip the crumb topping. Okay, there you go. That is what the crumb topping looks like. All right, for the muffin batter, we're gonna start by mixing together our dry ingredients here. So I've got 210 grams of all-purpose flour. I'm gonna put in 6 grams of baking powder. I'm gonna put in 3 grams of baking soda and my salt. Now, all of these ingredients and measurements are gonna be down in the description for you with the full recipe. And then I've got pumpkin pie spice. So I did 4 grams of pumpkin pie spice, 6 grams of salt. Then I'm just gonna take my whisk and I'm gonna whisk this up just to make sure that everything is combined. So we don't have any muffins that end up with a bunch of baking powder or baking soda. We've just got everything nicely combined. Okay, now we're gonna move on to the wet ingredients for our muffins. Okay, in another bowl, we're gonna combine our wet ingredients. So we've got 100 grams of granulated sugar, 100 grams of brown sugar, 2 large eggs, which is about 100 grams, our 10 grams of vanilla extract, and then I'm using avocado oil here. This is 120 grams. You can use just a vegetable oil if that's what you want. You could use coconut oil. I'm using avocado oil. Okay, I've got my sourdough discard here. Now we're using 125 grams of sourdough discard. And I wouldn't use discard that's been sitting in the back of your refrigerator for a long time. Try to use discard that's, about, I don't know, no more than 3, 4, maybe 5 days old. Otherwise, it's gonna add a little bit too much tang, and you probably don't want that much tang in your pumpkin muffins, okay? Then we're gonna add 120 grams of sour cream. I love sour cream in muffins. It makes them, just gives you a great texture and helps keep them moist longer. All right, we don't want to waste any of it. Come on out. Okay. All right. And then we have got our pumpkin. We are using 240 grams of pumpkin puree. And make sure that you're using pumpkin puree, not, the pumpkin pie filling. You can also buy that in a can. And we don't want to go with that because we're already adding in our own spices. All right. So we got that. We're gonna give this a mix. Now, I also have a little bit of milk here. If my batter feels a little bit dry, I will add a little bit of milk to it, and that's gonna kind of depend on how thick your starter is. If you've got discard that's really runny, you maybe won't need any additional milk, but if your starter is a little bit thicker, you might want some. So let's just mix this until it's well combined. Sometimes it can be a little hard to mix in that sourdough starter, so don't be afraid to take your time here. You can keep mixing. We haven't added the flour yet, so we're not in any danger of over mixing. And there you go. Now we're ready to add our dry ingredients to our wet ingredients. And the big key here when you do that is not to overmix. Once you add your dry ingredients to your wet ingredients, you don't want to overmix. You'll end up with a tough muffin. Now, I think that my batter is looking pretty good. I don't actually think I need any of this milk, so I'm not going to use it. Now, if you do need to add milk, you can go ahead and use an unsweetened almond milk. If you prefer a coconut milk, whatever works for you. I've done it with almond milk and had 0 issues. It still tastes great. So I'm adding in about half of my flour. Add the rest. And we're just gonna combine this until there's no dry bits of flour showing. We're almost there. Get all that flour. Whoa! Making a giant mess all over myself here. All right, there you go. That is our muffin batter. Now we're gonna start assembling these muffins. If you're enjoying this video, make sure to hit that like and subscribe. I've got lots of sourdough tutorials here on my channel, including my full beginner sourdough step-by-step walkthrough. I even have a free beginner sourdough guide linked down below, which is a great resource for anybody learning how to make sourdough bread. Okay, now we're gonna assemble our muffins. So I've got our muffin batter here, our cream cheese filling, and our brown sugar crumble topping. Now, a couple of tricks if you wanna get really tall muffins that have that signature tall muffin dome top. This is one of the ways that you do it. I've got my muffin tin here, and you'll notice that I'm only gonna be baking in every other spot of the muffin tin. So even though each one of these can hold a dozen muffins, I'm only gonna bake 6 in them. Spreading them out like this allows the air to evenly circulate throughout the muffins, and it will help to give them a taller rise when they're in the oven. The other thing that's gonna help is what I like to call the high-low baking method. Now what I do is I'm gonna immediately put these in a 425 degree oven, and I'm gonna bake them at 425 degrees for 5 minutes, and then I'm gonna turn the heat down to 350 degrees. So I'm gonna start at 425 for 5 minutes, Then I'll turn the heat down to 350 degrees and continue baking. And that is another trick that really makes a difference to get you those tall signature muffin tops that we all want. Okay, so I'm gonna start by filling up my muffin tins with my batter. Now, I'm only gonna fill them about a little bit more than a third of the way. So I'm using a scoop here, but you can use a spoon just as easily. So we're not filling these all the way to the top because we want to have room to put our cream cheese filling in, and then we will put more muffin batter right on top. So we've got that cream cheese filling in the center, more muffin batter on top, and then we're gonna put that crumble, and it's gonna be delicious. I find that using a scoop just makes the process a lot easier and less messy, which means there's less batter all over my muffin tins that I have to clean up, which I can appreciate. All right. Once you've got your muffin tin, now I'm using actually a paper lined muffin tin, but if you don't have muffin liners, you can actually just spray your muffin pan with a nonstick spray and it'll be great. And then you're gonna take your cream cheese mixture and you're gonna put about a tablespoon in each muffin. So I'm gonna use a scoop for that too. Just helps to keep everything uniform. It's gonna be so good when you're eating these. All right, see how easy that is when you use just your little scoop here? This is a 1 tablespoon size scoop, and I'll try to link it for you. Okay, now I'm gonna go back to my muffin batter and I'm gonna put a little bit more on the top of each one of these just to kind of cover that cream cheese and get our muffin liner filled almost all the way to the top. I know there's a lot of steps to these muffins, but they're worth it. It's gonna be so good. And this is gonna make about a dozen muffins, depending on how large you make them, but I'm using just a standard size muffin tin here. All right, almost there. Okay. And you can see some of these, the cream cheese filling isn't totally covered. That is perfectly fine. It's actually gonna be really pretty when it bakes up, so don't worry about that. Now I've got my crumble topping. This is one of my favorite parts of the whole process. And I'm just gonna sprinkle this on top of the muffins. And then I'm gonna go through and I'm gonna kind of press it down a little bit. So you'll see me, I'm gonna go around, sprinkle them all. This is where it gets messy, that's okay. And then I'm gonna press the topping down because we want this to try to stick a little bit into the batter, because as these bake and rise up, some of it's gonna fall off, and that's totally normal. So you can see I'm kind of going through and just patting it just to help it stick a little bit. Because I don't know about you, but I love the crumbly topping on a muffin. It really makes me feel like it's like a true bakery style muffin. So we don't want all that to fall off while they're baking. And I am just making a mess over here. Now, if you see any that look a little light on the topping, don't hesitate to put a little more. You've got plenty of this topping here. So you can be generous with it and add it however you like. Now, if you don't like the crumbly topping, you don't have to add it. It's totally up to you. Okay, let me pat these down just a little bit. Get that topping to stick. We don't want to lose any of it. Okay, and then we are going to bake these in our 425-degree oven for 5 minutes, and then we're gonna turn that temperature down to 350 degrees and keep baking probably for another, I don't know, 15-20 minutes. but don't open the oven, okay? So when you turn the temperature down, that's not the time to open the oven and peek in at the muffins. Keep the oven door closed. All right, I'm gonna go pop these in the oven and I'll be back with our baked muffins. Okay, while our muffins are in the oven, I wanted to talk to you about the long fermentation option for these muffins. If you want to go the full sourdough route, you can also make these muffins as an overnight long fermented recipe. So here's how you would do that. The night before baking, you're going to mix together the flour, sourdough starter, pumpkin, sour cream, the oil, eggs, both sugars, and the vanilla. Mix that together, and then you're just gonna cover it and put it in the refrigerator overnight and let that sourdough do its sourdough magic. Now, the next day, you will take it out, stir in the baking powder, baking soda, salt, and the pumpkin pie spices, and then assemble like you normally would with your cream cheese filling and your crumb topping. And that is how you would do the long fermented version of this recipe. So you can do the easy version using up your sourdough discard, or the full long ferment version, whatever works best for you. Now, if you want to do the long ferment version, definitely follow the instructions that I gave. You don't want to add in things like your baking soda and your baking powder, because those items are going to be affected as they sit in that batter all night long, and you don't want to have them in there. So make sure you follow those instructions and you'll be able to make a beautiful muffin that is fully fermented. Okay, look at how amazing these look. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I can't wait to dig in. All right, I'm gonna let these sit in the muffin tin for about 10 minutes before I move them to a cooling rack, and then we are gonna taste them. Okay, our muffins are done. Now these baked at 425 degrees for 5 minutes. Then I turned the temperature down to 350 and baked them for about another 16 or 17 minutes. And now they've been cooling. We're gonna slice into it, taste it. I mean, honestly, these sourdough pumpkin cream cheese muffins, so good. Soft, spicy, a little bit of the creamy cheesecake center, and this buttery cinnamon crumb topping is like the icing on the cake. Okay, so let's slice into it. And look at that, with that amazing cream cheese filling. And let's get the liner off. I cannot wait to eat these. I am ready for fall. Okay, I'm gonna take a big bite. Look at that. So good, so much better than just a plain muffin. I mean, you get everything here. So good. You need to make these, and if you do, eat them when they're still a little bit warm. I mean, you're the baker, you made them. You can eat them when they're still a little bit warm. They're absolutely delicious. And I tell myself that because they're made with sourdough, they're a little bit healthier. All right, if you love these muffins, you're gonna love my brown butter pumpkin spice sourdough coffee cake. I mean, that is another home run. So good for the fall. It's seriously a showstopper. The perfect fall bake to share with friends and family. So click over and watch that video next, and I'll see you there.